She kept calling it just one chair. But by the third time she said it, I understood that the chair was never the issue. She needed my daughter's big night to prove something it was never meant to prove. People think family conflict always announces itself with shouting. Sometimes it arrives in a careful voice, standing in the kitchen, holding a printed invitation, asking a question that sounds small enough to be reasonable. That is how it happened for me. My daughter Lena had been selected for a statewide Young Composers Showcase. She was 17, quiet in the way serious teenagers often are, and so talented that even praise made her uncomfortable. She had spent most of the year bent over our old upright piano, rewriting one piece over and over, changing only a few notes at a time, like she believed enough patience could make a feeling sit still long enough to be understood. When the acceptance email came, she read it twice, looked at me, and then cried so hard she laughed at herself for crying. It was one of those rare moments when a child lets you witness the exact size of their hope. The showcase was held in a restored theater downtown. Small room, old velvet seats, no extra space. Each student received 4 guest passes. That mattered, because 4 is just enough to feel generous until real people have to fit inside it. Lena knew immediately who she wanted there. Me, her mother Dana, my father, and Mr. Bell, the music teacher who kept staying after school on Fridays the year Lena almost quit altogether. The list made perfect sense. Not politically, not strategically, not in a way designed to keep every adult comfortable. It made sense the way truth often does before other people start negotiating it. By the time the passes arrived, I had been living with Maris for almost 2 years. Maris was not cruel. That would make the story easier. Cruelty, at least, lets you know what room you are standing in. Maris was polished, warm in public, capable of generosity when the generosity would be remembered. She liked hosting, loved handwritten place cards, and believed almost any tension could be solved if everyone behaved correctly enough in front of each other. Lena was polite to her, which is not the same as close. No big blow-ups, no cinematic hostility, just the kind of careful distance that forms when a child senses an adult wants something emotional before trust has actually grown there. I knew that. I also knew Maris wanted a more visible place in my life than she had earned in Lena's. I told myself time would handle it. Time handles less than people think. The passes arrived on a Thursday. Lena set them on the counter beside a bowl of peaches and said, "I want to drop one off for Mr. Bell tomorrow after school." Maris was making tea. She turned, smiled, and asked, "So who all gets one?" Lena answered easily, because she had no idea the answer might need armor. "Mom, Dad, Grandpa, and Mr. Bell." There was a pause so brief I might have missed it if I had not already spent a year learning how silence changes shape before conflict does. Maris smiled again, but this time it looked arranged. "Oh," she said. "I assumed I'd be there too." Lena did what young people do when adults put weight into the room without warning. She went still. I stepped in before she had to manage it. I said, "It's only 4 passes." She made her choices a while ago. Reasonable sentence. Soft tone. Nothing theatrical. Maris nodded, like someone accepting information. Then she asked, "And you're comfortable with that?" That question sounds harmless, unless you know what it is doing. It was not about the showcase. It was a request for alignment. A test disguised as curiosity. I said, "It's Lena's event." Maris stirred her tea, though the sugar had already dissolved. "I know it's Lena's event," she said. "I just think it sends a message when the woman you live with is the only one not included." That was the first moment I felt the night start changing meaning. Because there it was. Not disappointment, not sadness, message. Not, "I wish I could support her." Not, "I thought we were getting closer." A message about status, about placement, about who the room would appear to recognize. Lena mumbled that she was going upstairs to finish homework, and left before I could stop her. The second she disappeared, Maris put the spoon down and said, "I'm trying not to be hurt, but I don't know what else I'm supposed to take from this." I told her there was nothing to take from it. The guest list was about Lena, not a referendum on anyone. Maris laughed, but not because anything was funny. "That's easy for you to say," she said. "You're automatically part of the picture." There are sentences that tell you more than an argument ever could. Automatically part of the picture. As if belonging to a child's milestone were something adults competed for. As if public proximity could substitute for private trust. As if the right chair in the right room might settle a feeling no honest conversation had been able to settle yet. I said she only had 4 passes. Maris said exactly, 4 mattered. That's why this matters. That line stayed with me, because it explained everything. Scarcity had turned the invitation into currency. If there had been 20 open seats, none of this would have happened. But because there were only 4, the absence itself felt like proof to her, and she wanted the proof changed. Over the next 2 days, she kept returning to it from different angles, as if a better entry point might make the same request look less like pressure. Friday night, she asked whether Mr. Bell would even notice if he watched a recording instead. Saturday morning, she said grandparents usually understand making room for the present. Saturday afternoon, she asked whether Dana might graciously step back to avoid tension. That one made me stare at her. Not because Dana would have done it, she would not have, but because the suggestion revealed just how completely the event had been recategorized inside Maris's mind. This was no longer a teenager's showcase. It was an arrangement problem, a seating chart, a symbolic contest that needed the correct adults in the visible frame. I said, "Do you hear yourself?" She crossed her arms and said, "Do you? I live here too. I've invested in this family too. At some point that should count." Count. Another revealing word. Like love was a ledger. Like domestic proximity created entitlement to ceremonial access. Like being present in the daily background meant a child owed you a foreground moment. What made it worse was that part of me understood the wound beneath it. Not agreed with it. Understood it. Maris wanted reassurance. She wanted visible evidence that the life we had built together had a recognized shape. But the comment pattern preserved in the Scout notes was exactly right about stories like this. People respond so strongly because reassurance becomes corrosive the second it needs to be extracted from someone else's milestone. Especially a child. Especially a child who had already made her choice quietly, clearly, and without malice. On Sunday, Lena asked if it would be awkward if she gave Mr. Bell his pass in person after rehearsal. She said it while looking at the floor, which told me she had already sensed the air in the house had changed around something she should never have been made to carry. I told her it would not be awkward. I told her she had done nothing wrong. I told her the guest list was still hers. She nodded, but she looked relieved in that exhausted way children do when adults finally choose to be adults. That night, Maris tried one last version. She said, "I'm not asking to take something from Lena. I'm asking not to be publicly sidelined." And that, more than anything, was the sentence that finished it for me. Because the child had somehow disappeared from her own celebration. The piece Lena had written. The year of work. The courage it took to let strangers perform something that began alone in her room. All of it had been reduced to the backdrop for an adult fear. What does my absence say about me? I said, if this night has to prove where you stand, then we have a bigger problem than one chair. Maris looked at me like I had failed a test she never admitted she was giving. She said, "So I'm just supposed to smile while your ex gets the place I don't?" There it was, clearer than before. Not support. Not pride. Not love for Lena. A place. That was when I understood what the comments in the internal note had seen so quickly. The real split in stories like this is not between generous people and selfish people. It is between people who can let a child's day belong to the child, and people who need every meaningful room to confirm their own rank inside it. I kept my voice calm. I said, Dana is there because she is Lena's mother. Mr. Bell is there because he helped Lena stay in music. My father is there because Lena asked for him. These are not symbolic negotiations. They are the people she chose for the life she actually lived. Maris said nothing after that, not because she agreed, because the argument had finally lost its disguises. The night of the showcase, Lena wore black slacks, borrowed earrings from Dana, and carried her folded program like it might float away if she loosened her grip. My father cried before the second piece even started, which embarrassed nobody except him. Mr. Bell sat perfectly still during Lena's composition, then put one hand over his mouth when the final note ended, like he had forgotten to protect himself from feeling proud. Dana squeezed Lena so hard afterward that Lena laughed and complained about her jacket. And in the middle of all of it, I had a strange, quiet certainty. The right people were there. Not because they won. Not because someone else lost. because the room reflected the truth of Lena's life instead of the insecurity of someone standing near it. When I got home, Maris asked how it went. I said she was incredible, and that should have been enough. Maybe in a healthier story it would have been, but Maris only nodded and asked whether anyone had saved her a program. I handed her one from my coat pocket. She took it, ran her thumb over Lena's name, and said, "I just didn't want to be invisible." I almost answered with comfort. Old instinct. The reflex to soften what another person has made difficult. But invisibility was not what happened here. She had not been erased. She had been told, quietly and correctly, that a child's milestone was not the place to settle an adult insecurity. So I said, "You were never invisible. You just weren't entitled to use her night as proof. Some endings are slam doors. Others are smaller, a program booklet on the table, a single empty chair you never got to sit in. A relationship suddenly lit by the exact thing one person needed from the wrong moment. That was the night I stopped thinking we were arguing about a guest pass and started admitting that some people do not just want to be included, they want the room itself to certify them."
Thank you for watching. If this story pulled you in, do me one favor. Hit like, subscribe, and turn on notifications so the next one finds you the moment it drops. Remember, nothing is ever just what it seems. See you on the next one.